For 23 years, two young girls grew up believing their mother had simply left them. She had walked out, chosen a stranger over her own children, never looked back. That was the story they were told. That was the story they believed. But here is the part that changes everything. The whole time they were growing up, going to school, becoming teenagers, becoming women, their mother was never more than a few feet away. She had never left that property at all. The answer to her disappearance was right there in the backyard, hidden inside a steel drum for 23 years. To understand this story, you need to go back to suburban Australia in the early 1980s. The Boyle family had emigrated from Wales, like so many others at that time, looking for a fresh start in a new country. Frederick Boyle, his wife, Edwina, their two young daughters. On the surface, they were an ordinary immigrant family working to build a life. They had a home, a yard, the everyday rhythms of a working household. Frederick worked. Edwina kept the home and raised their children. From the outside, nothing appeared unusual. But inside that household, things were far from stable. Frederick had been having an affair. And by the evening of October 6, 1983, whatever tension had been building inside that marriage was about to reach a point of no return. We don't know every detail of what happened that night. What we do know is that by the time the sun rose the following morning, Edwina Boyle was gone. And Frederick Boyle had a story ready. He told his daughters that their mother had left. She had run off, he said, with a truck driver. She had chosen to go, chosen to leave them behind, chosen to start a new life somewhere else. The girls were young. They had no reason to question their father. And so they carried that story with them for the next 23 years. There is a particular kind of wound that comes from believing a parent simply chose to leave. It doesn't announce itself all at once. It settles in quietly, gets woven into how you see yourself, how much you trust people, how worthy of love you believe you are. Edwina's daughters grew up carrying that weight. In their minds, their mother had made a choice. She had looked at her life, at her family, at her children, and decided to walk away. That belief shaped them in ways they couldn't fully see at the time. It affected how they navigated relationships, how they processed grief, how they understood what family meant. And all the while, the man who had planted that belief was living right alongside them. Frederick moved on quickly after Edwina's disappearance. Remarkably quickly. His mistress, the woman he had been seeing behind Edwina's back, moved into the family home almost immediately after Edwina vanished. For the daughters, this was simply the new reality. Their mother was gone. Their father had moved on. Life continued. But for anyone looking at it from the outside, the speed of Frederick's transition was striking. A wife disappears overnight. A new woman is installed in the home within days. No public grief. No extended search. No pressing the police for answers. Just continuation. As if Edwina had never existed at all. What followed was one of the longest-running deceptions in the case's history. For more than 2 decades, Frederick Boyle maintained his story without wavering. Edwina had left. She had chosen to go. There was nothing more to say. He never reported her as a missing person. He never expressed concern about where she had gone or whether she was safe. He didn't encourage his daughters to look for her or to wonder about her well-being. If the subject came up, it was closed down quickly. And because no one had reason to suspect anything different, the story held. Edwina Boyle became, officially, a woman who had abandoned her family. Her daughters eventually built their own lives. They married. They had their own children. They carried the complicated grief of daughters whose mother had, they believed, chosen not to know them. And the backyard of the family property sat undisturbed. The drum sat there through seasons and years and decades, through rain and heat and everything in between. No one touched it. No one asked about it. In 2006, 23 years after Edwina Boyle vanished, something shifted. One of Edwina's daughters and her husband were working to clean up the old family property. The kind of task that families take on when houses need to be cleared or sold or passed on. They moved through the yard methodically, and at some point, they came to a 45-gallon steel drum sitting in a corner of the property. It was old, heavily weathered, It had clearly been sitting in that exact spot for a very long time. The son-in-law looked at it. It seemed like junk. Old waste, perhaps. Something left behind and forgotten. But something felt off. The drum was sealed. The way it was positioned, the way it had been sitting there for what appeared to be decades. Something about it didn't add up. He opened it. And in that moment, the lie that had sustained a family for 23 years began to collapse. What was inside that drum was not waste. It was not junk left behind and forgotten. It was the remains of Edwina Boyle. The call to police that followed opened one of the most disturbing investigations Australian authorities had seen in years. Not because of the complexity of the crime scene, but because of the staggering simplicity of it. Edwina had never left. She had never run off with a stranger. She had never chosen to abandon her children. She had been there the entire time, right there, on the same property where her daughters had grown up, where they had eaten dinner and gone to school and learned what it meant to be left behind. The forensic process was painstaking. Identifying remains after more than 2 decades is a complex undertaking. Investigators worked carefully to confirm what they were looking at and to begin building a picture of what had happened on October 6, 1983. Frederick Boyle was located and brought in for questioning. He was now an old man, but the question facing investigators was the same one that faced him when he was young. What happened to Edwina? And for the first time in 23 years, he was going to have to answer it. When confronted with the discovery, Frederick Boyle did not immediately confess. Instead, he offered an explanation. He claimed that on the night of October 6, 1983, he had come home to find Edwina already dead. Shot, he said, by an unknown intruder. He hadn't called the police, he explained, because he was terrified. He was having an affair. He knew how it would look. A wife dead, a husband with a mistress. He was convinced he would be blamed immediately. So he made a terrible decision, he said. He hid the body. He sealed it in the drum. He buried the truth along with it. And then he told his daughters their mother had left. Not to protect himself from a murder charge, he claimed, but simply to cover up the fact that he had panicked and concealed a death. He was a scared man who had made a catastrophic mistake. That was the story he brought to court. And on the surface, it had a certain internal logic. A man in the wrong place. A terrible decision made under pressure. A lie that grew too large to ever walk back. But investigators weren't satisfied, because the evidence told a different story. The physical evidence recovered from the drum and the property was examined carefully by forensic specialists. The nature of Edwina's injuries, the position and condition of the remains, the specific details of how the drum had been sealed and placed. None of it was consistent with a panicked husband stumbling upon an already dead wife and making a desperate, impulsive decision. The evidence pointed towards something planned, something deliberate, something that had been thought through before it happened, not after. Investigators also looked at the timeline around Edwina's death with fresh eyes. The speed with which Frederick's mistress moved into the family home. The absence of any grieving behavior, any search, any concern. The total disappearance of Edwina from Frederick's emotional life the moment she was gone. When they assembled the full picture, prosecutors reached a clear conclusion. Frederick Boyle had not panicked. He had not stumbled upon a tragedy. He had made a calculated decision to remove his wife from his life, permanently, so he could move forward with the woman he actually wanted to be with. No messy divorce. No custody battle. No public humiliation. Just an exit. Clean and permanent. Edwina Boyle, in the life Frederick had decided he wanted, was simply a problem to be solved. Frederick Boyle stood trial. He was convicted of the murder of his wife, Edwina Boyle. He received a custodial sentence. He was in his 70s by the time justice arrived. Edwina had been waiting 23 years for it. There is a particular dimension of this case that deserves to be acknowledged directly, because the crime itself is one part of the story. But what Edwina's daughters had to absorb when that drum was opened is something else entirely. In a single afternoon, everything they had understood about their own history was dismantled. Their mother had not abandoned them. She had been taken from them. The grief they had carried, the specific grief of children who believed they were chosen against, turned out to be based on a lie. A deliberate, sustained, carefully maintained lie told by the person who was supposed to protect them. The man who had dried their tears, who had told them to move on, who had brought another woman into their home while their mother's remains sat in the backyard. That man had orchestrated everything. There are no clean words for what that realization must feel like. To spend 2 decades grieving one kind of loss, and then discover you were actually grieving something else entirely. To have to rebuild your entire understanding of your own childhood. That is a cruelty compounded on top of a crime. Cases like the Edwina Boyle case stay with us because they unsettle something fundamental. We want to believe that the people closest to us are who they appear to be. We want to believe that families, however imperfect, are held together by something real. But this case is a reminder that the most effective deceptions are not carried out by strangers. They are carried out by the familiar, by the people already inside the house, already trusted with the children, already woven into the everyday fabric of a family's life. The Boyle family home looked ordinary for 23 years. The daughters went about their lives. The neighbors carried on. The community noticed nothing unusual. And all the while, the truth sat in the backyard, sealed inside a drum, waiting. In 2006, a family member disturbed a steel drum that had sat untouched for over 2 decades. In the moments that followed, a lie that had lasted 23 years began to unravel. Edwina Boyle had never left. She had never run off, never chosen a stranger over her children, never decided that her family wasn't worth staying for. She had been right there the entire time. Her daughters spent their formative years shaped by a story that was never true. And the man responsible for that story, and for everything beneath it, went about his life for over 2 decades as though nothing had happened. The most terrifying secrets are sometimes not hidden far away. They are hidden right beside us, in plain sight, behind an ordinary front door, underneath an ordinary sky, in a backyard that looked to everyone who passed it like nothing more than a backyard. Before you go, I want to leave you with a question. When you hear a case like this, a deception that lasted 23 years, maintained by one person inside a family, what does it tell you about how well we really know the people around us? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more cases like this, stories where the truth took decades to surface, where the answers were closer than anyone imagined, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications. Every week, we go deeper than the headlines, because the full story is almost always more complicated and more important than what you first heard. I'll see you in the next one.